Well, thank you very much, everybody, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for joining today's online meeting on ensuring appropriate patient access to plasma-derived medical products. Although I cannot welcome you in person, as I would like at the European Parliament, it is a pleasure for me to host this online meeting on such a crucial topic. As a medical doctor, patient access to care has always been of key interest in my political career, including as an MEP. The European Parliament has been very committed to working together with stakeholders on access to care in the context of COVID-19 pandemic and behind. And I fully share this commitment. Recently, the ENVI committee has been looking into issues of accessibility to key medicines in form of a non-initiative report, which resulted in an European Parliament resolution published recently on the 17th of September 2020 on shortages of medicines, how to address an emerging problem. The report recognizes the need to collect more plasma in Europe for manufacturing plasma-derived medical products for European patients and to decrease reliance on third countries, such as the United States, particularly when it comes to plasma. I think that the pandemic put us much more aware of the difficulties of very complicated logistic chains, and we cannot rely on them. With the COVID-19 pandemic, introducing additional pressure on the delicate balance between global plasma supply and patients' clinical needs for plasma-derived medicinal products, the need for increased plasma collection has never been more critical. Aside plasma collection, reimbursement policies of procurement practices also have a direct impact on access to plasma therapies. In the end, 300,000 patients across Europe with rare and often genetic conditions, such as primary immunodeficiencies, Guillain-Barré syndrome, other inflammatory neurologic syndromes, are reliant on these products to have a normal life. I therefore cannot accept that today in European Union, patients still face numerous access challenges to plasma-derived medicinal products. How can we address these challenges across the European Union? What can we policymakers do to ensure patient access to care? I'm looking forward to hearing from patient representatives, medical professionals, industry representatives, and of course from the Commission, what concrete measures they consider should be taken at European and national level to ensure progress is made and patients have access to the medicines they need. With the Commission's pharmaceutical strategy around the corner, I feel that today's discussion is very timely. And I want to share with you the speech of the President of the Commission, Mrs. von der Leyen, in the recent address to the European Parliament. We must really build the European Union for health. I think that most European citizens really want that, and we should hear the will of the European.
Our next speaker is Dr. Stefaan van der Spiegel. He's head of sector at the Health Innovation and Substances of Human Origin at DG SANTE and the European Commission. Stefaan, we're great to have you with us today.
To start, maybe why do we have an EU legal framework in this field? And you might recall in the 80s and 90s that across Europe we have got quite some serious safety concerns because of transmission of infectious diseases like HIV, hepatitis, through plasma derivatives and other substances of human origin. There's quite some famous cases and numbers in the UK, Italy, Romania, also in France. This was quite politically an important topic. So that was the moment that the member states have given the European Union a mandate to legislate this field. And this mandate, next slide, please. Yeah, this mandate is actually there to set safety and quality standards. So the change from donation to human application, all the steps from one donor body to a recipient body. And I won't go into details here, but there are EU requirements on the professionals on how they have to handle those materials, tests, work with the right donors. There's requirements on authorities in every country to oversee oversight, and there's requirements on us at European Commission level, where we support all those activities of and oversight. For example, we are running rapid alert platforms here. Next, please. So this legislation actually dates back from 2002. And so it's an older legislation. That's why the Commission has decided to run an evaluation of this legislation. And we have, so basically to see if it's serving its purpose and still fit for that purpose. And we have, end of last year, published a report on that with some key findings and shortcomings. And I just want to bring you here two of them which are most relevant for our discussion today. I think the first one is very much underlining what I think was already mentioned in the introduction by Dr. Pizarro, is that we have a concern in the EU about sustained access and sufficiency to those plasma-derived medicinal products, because they are, for a significant part, provided are available thanks to the plasma collected and donated in the United States. About 1/3 of plasma derivatives used in the EU are based on plasma that originates from the United States, and that of course makes us vulnerable and makes the supply for our patients vulnerable. Next. Yeah, there's another finding that I think is very important to put on the table here, and that's the very unique nature of plasma-derived medicine products, and that's very different from any other pharmaceutical, is that actually to have them available, you need donors, you need humans, citizens that can make donations. And what we found in our legal evaluation is that there's not really sufficient measures to protect those donors, that they can be trustfully going to give donations, knowing that they will be helping others, but also be safe themselves. And that is, I think, an important element here, because if we indeed want to increase plasma collection in the EU, which is a bit the conclusion of the previous slide I presented, then we will need to have a stable and a trustworthy donor group and basis in the European Union. So it's important that they're then also well protected. So that was on the framework on safety quality. So of course, as mentioned before, there's a specific framework now also on the table coming, the pharma strategy, which again, COVID makes very clear that there's a very high need for this framework. I think in the last months we have seen issues on international dependency of active ingredients. I think there's a very strong analogy with the discussions we are going to have here today. We have seen shortages on certain supplies of medicines. We have seen the need for crisis management and preparedness. Next. And again, already before this COVID crisis, it was really on top of the mission letter for our Commissioner of Health to look into ways to ensure supply of affordable medicines to the European citizens and to support the pharmaceutical industry when doing that.
My name is Patricia Blomquist, and I'm a volunteer for the GBS CIDP Foundation International. And as such, I advocate for people with Guillain-Barré syndrome, CIDP, and variants. A bit about these disorders. To start with GBS, it's a disorder of the peripheral nerves that are attacked by the body's own immune system. It's acute and rapidly progressive, and in extreme cases, a patient might end up being completely paralyzed within a day. One of the main features, one of the main symptoms is muscle weakness in legs and arms, but these are leading to paralysis, and this paralysis can also extend to the face and respiratory muscles, making in about 25% of the patients artificial ventilation necessary. The incidence is about 1 to 2 persons in every 100,000 per year. It's a monophasic disease, so generally only knows one episode of disease. The preferred treatment is immunoglobulins. Next slide, please. As for CIDP and MMN, the chronic cousins, these develop much slower than GBS, which can make diagnosis difficult. What about the patient's challenges? Of course, they already have to deal with a disease, but if you ask the patients what they want, their answer, their wish list is pretty simple. They want their therapy to be available, they want it to be safe and affordable. And a polite patient will probably add please, so I will as well. And that makes this little wish list ASAP easy to remember. Next slide, please. However, if there are problems with availability or affordability, these will lead to access issues for patients and therefore, in that way, endanger patients' safety and their quality of life. The causes for access issues vary per country. So for Europe, there is no real one-size-fits-all solution. Next slide, please. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize that patients' access to this indispensable and unique therapy with immunoglobulins must be ensured. As the need for immunoglobulins will only increase in the future, as we know it will, so will the need for plasma as starting material. Currently, there is already additional pressure due to COVID-19. So collective focus must be on increasing Europe's plasma collection in order to ensure availability while reducing Europe's reliance on US plasma. Thank you for your attention.
Patricia, thank you so much. It's a really critical perspective for us to have today. Can I just ask you, have you faced supply issues, availability issues personally? You're aware of people who have faced availability issues or affordability issues?
From time to time, we hear heartbreaking stories of people not being able to get their next treatment. And of course, they will deteriorate, and that is really heartbreaking to hear. So it's imperative for people to receive their treatments and receive them frequently.
Have you been able to determine particular patterns why these people have not been able to access the treatments?
As it was mentioned before, it varies greatly. It
Okay.
can be reimbursement issues, real availability, all sorts of problems. So, and that makes it difficult to address, really.
Okay, is it useful for you to think in terms of a European system of address where patients who do have access can call upon a wider lobby group to be able to action this?
That would be great, and particularly more attention to the possibility to donate plasma. I think a lot of people aren't even aware of the possibility to donate plasma. Blood, okay, but plasma is for many people totally new.
Thank you for that. I think that's an issue we'll come back to later on in the discussion. Excellent, Patricia. Thanks so much for your contribution. And our next speaker is Anneli Larsson. She's Executive Director of Primaer Immunbrist organization. She's a member of the International Patient Organization for Primary Immunodeficiencies.
And as Brian said, I work for the Swedish Patient Organization for Primary Immunodeficiencies, but today I represent the International Patient Organization. And I became involved in this community for more than 20 years ago when my younger son was diagnosed with a primary immunodeficiency. Next, please. First, a few words about the primary immunodeficiencies. PIDs are actually more than 400 different chronic rare diseases. And if you have a primary deficiency, this parts of your immune systems are missing or function improperly. And this leads to repeated infections, and sometimes they are really severe. And these are caused by genetic defects. And today, over 33,000 patients are documented in the SID registry the European Patient Registry. And looking at the prevalence, you can see that 33,000 is just 15% of the persons expected to have a primary immunodeficiency in Europe. And of course, everybody's maybe not in the registry yet, but you can still see that there is many people still undiagnosed. And most patients with PIDs are on prophylactic treatments, such as immunoglobulins. And a person with a primary immunodeficiency has no alternative therapy to immunoglobulin. Next, please. Patient organizations and PID specialists have started receiving notification about the reduced availability of IG products in hospitals, and that the choice of different products may be limited in the coming months due to the drop in the plasma and blood collection. And it is difficult to know how much COVID-19 has affected the plasma donations and how this will affect the availability of PDMPs now and in the years to come. We still don't know. Next, please. And what can be done to improve the situation? PLUS, the platform of plasma protein users, gathered in January 2019 different stakeholders in the field of blood and plasma. And together they agreed on a set of principles to encourage blood and plasma donation in Europe. The principles included, for instance, increased supply, development of policies based on facts and science, and they also saw a need for strengthened plasmapheresis programs and a need for regionally balanced plasma collection. And they also called for future EU legislation on PDMCs to be more patient-centered. And now, more than urgent never to secure treatment with EG and other PDMPs. Next, please. And I agree about the importance to look at the access to medicines for patients from the patient's perspective. And I think it's important to keep in mind that it is for these persons and others like them across the EU, we all together need to find solutions to secure their life-saving treatment. To start with, we call for an open dialogue to evaluate the effect of COVID-19 to secure access to plasma products now and in the years to come. So, and in countries where there are no demand managing plans, we hope they will start develop them very soon.
And our next speaker is Isabella Quinte. She's Professor of Internal Medicine and Immunology, Head Primary Immunodeficiencies Unit at the Sapienza University of Rome. Isabella, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
And I can hear you clearly. Your presentation's there. You have 10 minutes. I'll give you a shot at 2 minutes to go. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm a clinical immunologist. So I'm taking care of patients with adult primary immunodeficiency. So next, please. We all know, and we heard just now, that immunoglobulin therapy is a life-saving treatment in patients with primary immunodeficiency, because this is the only way to replace a missing function. And so there are no other treatment, as just said before, for these patients with primary immunodeficiency. So the next one. And again, you saw the number before. I just want to show you here that most of the patients that are in the European Society Registry for Primary Immunodeficiency are affected by antibody deficiency. But we should take into our account also that most of the other primary immunodeficiency require immunoglobulin treatment. So this is an urgent need, and there is no way to replace this treatment for this patient. So next one. Now COVID. COVID is not only a new challenge for us. Convalescent plasma has been used, but also some companies are preparing hyperimmunoglobulins. And this is also a new aspect that should be addressed. Are these useful? This is exactly what we expect for the future, and we don't know if this will increase the shortage of polyvalent immunoglobulins for our PID patient. And again, polyvalent immunoglobulin are administered at higher dosages. And this is in COVID, because this is a possible treatment for, and there are also some papers that have been published. So for COVID patients, not only convalescent plasma, these are under study at the moment, but polyvalent immunoglobulin at higher dosages, together with low molecular weight heparin, are already in use for patients with COVID. Next one. And this is so my conclusion: the administration of immunoglobulins induce multiple effects on the immune system functions, and the knowledge of this effect must be better evaluated, must guide future decision and treatment choice, and should guide clinical and basic research. And so therapy should be individualized. And this is my last point. I would like to consider this, and I would like that all the people who attend this meeting consider that immunoglobulin cannot be considered a generic drug. Someone before me spoke about the possibility that immunoglobulin go into tender. This is really impossible because all kinds of products are different, not in terms of efficacy, but in terms of biological effect and in terms of tolerability.
Let's go to our last presentation, which is with Oliver Schmidt, General Manager at CSL Behring Italy and Chair PPTA EU Board.
So thank you, Brian. My name is Olli Schmidt, as already stated. Today I'm here as the Chairman of the European Board of PPTA. I would like to thank Dr. Pizarro for giving us the opportunity to show also the industry view on the topic which has already been stated. I have to anticipate that several of the messages I will state and emphasize have already been mentioned, so therefore you can see how important it is to work in this kind of system with different stakeholders. So, having stated that, just a brief, next slide please. Just to say who is PPTA, which I present today. PPTA is means Plasma Protein Therapeutics Association, is a global trade association and represents private plasma collection centers as well as manufacturers of life-saving plasma proteins. PPTA member companies have a very strong manufacturing presence in Europe. As we already heard, roughly 60% of the plasma protein therapies prescribed in Europe are coming from Europe. Unfortunately, this means that there is also here a dependence of product coming from the United States. What are the main focus PPTA is working on? The two areas are, exactly as already mentioned today, ensure patient access to safe and effective PDMPs, and secondly, ensure a balanced global sufficiency of plasma. We heard a lot about immunoglobulins today and how they're used, but let's do one step back and try to understand, first of all, what is plasma? If you think about your blood, 55% of the blood is plasma, 44% are red blood cells, 1% are white blood cells and platelets. If you then just go into the plasma by itself, so 92% of plasma is water, just water. 7% are proteins we're talking about, and 1% other ingredients. If you now move to the right and see, there are a few examples of plasma derived medicinal products which are fractionated and produced out of plasma. You see albumin, you see Ig, which are also known as antibodies, and this is the topic we are talking mainly today. But there are also other rare diseases which are fully depending on plasma-derived proteins. So therefore, what you can say today that in Europe, roughly 300,000 European patients were on the therapies to treat a variety of rare and chronic and potentially life-threatening conditions. So if you go, please, to the next slide. PPTA launched last week during the International Plasma Awareness Week a plasma campaign called "It's in Us, All to Save a Life, Donate Plasma." This campaign calls for more plasma donations across Europe and also for policymakers to build the adequate policy framework at both EU and national levels to achieve this objective. So this is absolutely aligned with the statement of the EU Commissioner Kyriakides. She stated at the World Blood Donor Day, 14th of June, that this year, as we continue the fight against COVID-19 pandemic, your donations are needed more than ever. So this was the first time that it was clearly stated how important it is. So the next slide, please. So PPTA also proposed not only focusing on plasma, but on plasma, on the access so to ensure great access and availability of pharmaceutical products to patients. It was mentioned that Europe should be one country. I think Isabella stated it, but it's not the case. So we have completely different reimbursement systems. In some countries, PDMPs are not reimbursed at all, or only for a very narrow group. We have therefore also different ways of making therapies available, and this of course will not help us in order to maximize the clinical socioeconomic benefits, which have been mentioned also by Professor Annemans. So, and again, what we have to do is we have to try to reduce or get rid of the client payback. Here in this context, it is positive to see that some countries have recognized the uniqueness of these plasma-derived medicinal products and lifted or at least reduced these kind of taxes. So all this would clearly help to improve the overall situation of the European healthcare. So in conclusion, we can state that EU member states supported by EU policies should apply effective measures in collaboration with the private industry, and this is important, the collaboration here, to promote and grow plasma donations across Europe to fulfill the clinical need for the PDMPs. Ensure the broadest reimbursement coverage for all patients in order to maximize these benefits, which have been shown also in the Vintura report. And lastly, optimize reimbursement policies in order to make available product and to maintain the PDMPs industry sustainability, so that value is considered, not auxiliary price, as it was mentioned by Isabella. So therefore, to offer a treatment for all patients in Europe. At the end of the day, let's make a strong statement here. PDA urges decisive actions in Europe to increase plasma donations, especially which are impacted significantly by COVID-19. So with that, I conclude here and thank you for your attention.
We're going to bring our panelists back in for a conversation. We're going to add one. Tomasz Kluszczynski, he's a partner at Vintura, a consultancy providing healthcare and life. The questions right away. And thank you also for everybody staying on time. We're right on the mark. So that gives more time to discuss as well. EURORDIS, the European Organization for Rare Diseases, supports the idea that the supply should be coordinated at the EU level, considering demand and offer and monitoring stocks. This should no longer be left at national level, says Francois, and member states can compete against each other in purchasing supplies or accumulate more product than they need. Hence, an EU coordination is needed to ensure solidarity among member states. Tomasz, you want to take that?
Sure, very happy. First of all, I never had the chance to thank Dr. Pizarro for invitation and the illustrious panel for having me and allowing me to answer some of the questions. So I think the question is a very tricky one. And I think it is a tricky one on two counts, because it poses a proposition of the ideal state of things, i.e. an ultimate solidarity and an EU harmonization of something that is currently so heterogeneous. So let's imagine a situation where all the countries have the same infrastructure and the same systems of collecting plasma. Only under these conditions, this harmonization would make sense or would be effective. I think Oliver and many others have mentioned repeatedly, and you can probably look at the greater detail in our white paper, is that the collection of plasma is as heterogeneous and legislated and regulated in as many ways as there are countries in Europe. Having said so, of course, we all would like that harmonization. In the meantime, however, what is the utmost objective and urgency is to increase that plasma. If it means that in Poland or in Portugal, plasma is increased by both ethical and efficacious, that's absolutely fine. We need to build the base to ensure sufficient supply, not at this stage talk about harmonization. If I'm being too brash about that answer, this is only because of the passion for the ensuring the basics. And once those basics are ensured, we can start talking about harmonization. We can start talking about a pan-European system. That's an ideal, and that's an ideal we'll strive for. But let's sort out the country level basics first.
So just going to give our panelists, this is your soundbite. This is not a repeat of anything. 20 seconds each for your highlights. What matters to you most in this? I'm going to start at the top of my window here. Oliver, 20 seconds.
Yeah, very simply speaking, we already stated that the two items are absolutely key and must. Firstly, have more access to plasma, and secondly, more equal reimbursement systems which allow all patients to achieve this treatment. And in this context, as Tomasz stated, it's not only immunoglobulins. There are a lot of other therapies which are treated, and quite often life-saving products are given due to plasma therapeutic medical products. So we only focus today on one area, but also the others are key, and quite often they are very tiny patient groups, but they need the support exactly as the ones we were talking about today.
Thank you. Patricia, 20 seconds. Last comment.
Let's all make the general public aware of the possibility to donate plasma. I used to donate blood, and at that time, I was not aware of the possibility to donate plasma. So there must be more of those people out there.
I'm one of them. Thank you. Anneli?
And I also think it's important to realize that the patient organization is really important here to spread awareness. We know the country we act in, so the support to the patient organization is very important. And I also think it's important that we dare to talk about, there are so many holy cows in this area. I mean, we have discussed some of them here today, but it must not be forbidden to talk about it. We don't know the answer yet, but we don't reach any goal to more plasma if we don't dare to talk about the situation, because they are so different in every country. So I think we must pay respect to each country, but we still must discuss the questions.
Okay, off to the abattoir with the holy cows. Stefaan?
Thank you. I think that the big learning here is important to keep an eye on the big picture, and that we have really two important elements here to work on. One is making sure we collect more plasma and get it into the EU or in the EU immediately, and secondly, that we then also need to make sure that this reaches all the patients who need this most. Yeah, a lot of work to come, I think.
Thank you. Isabella?
So 2 points. First, no more tender, please. Second one, a better connection with basic science. Basic immunology may teach us something that is important to know. So better connection between different science, also clinical science and basic immunology. Thank you.
So 2 main points that have already been mentioned by either one of the panelists or by the animals. So one is a reminder, and I was very empathetic and very philosophical in many of the points, so I'll be very quantitative now. Let's remember how huge a socioeconomic value of PDMPs is in numbers. In hemophilia and primary immunodeficiencies alone, by avoiding disability and extending life, we can quantify it as 2 billion euros per year. These numbers should work on imagination. We can avoid 1.5 billion euros of associated costs, such as hospitalizations. These are huge numbers. So it is not just the science, it is not just our opinion. There's also money and socioeconomic benefit involved, and psychosocial aspects. So with all that benefit in mind, I want to repeat one more thing that Stefaan and
you have 5 seconds.
Let's put our differences aside and find a solution to plasma availability and availability of optimal treatments. I mean, optimal, as Isabella said, in the multi-stakeholder platform. That's it from me.
Thank you. Well, so to wrap up, just PDMP is a fragile ecosystem, uncertain plasma donation volumes, differing reimbursement processes in the EU. And let me just put you on mute there. And the EU and member states' policies must recognize the unique nature of PDMPs and the unique nature of the plasma ecosystem. EU and member states' policies must improve patient access and availability of PDMPs. And there across the EU as well, which are critical in terms of being addressed. The EU pharma strategy consultation process must address the reliance on the imports of medicines and starting materials, and Europe must collect more plasma. I think we heard that lots and lots today, and we got to do it urgently because the diagnostic system, as that demand on the need for these drugs for treatments and generic drugs, they're not to be considered as such. More research is needed. Education is needed on what plasma is, and also the quality of adjusted life years, the cost benefit analysis. If we're actually going to have tenders, and I'm sorry, Isabella, that's probably going to be the case. What can we do to improve that process as well? And the EU-US importation gap. We need to diversify our markets, and I'm sure we have ways that we can do that. Synthetic products, somebody's got to fund that. Some are out there in the future. Standardization, harmonization of processes and data is critical as well. That's all from me. I'm going to thank panelists for their excellent contributions today. I enjoyed this. It was light and concise. Thank you for all your excellent timekeeping, and to our audience as well. Thank you for your attention and for the questions that you sent in. Helmut, Geuking, how are you ready to speak?
Yeah, vielen lieben
Good
Dank.
afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thanks a
Floor
lot
is all
for giving
yours.
me the floor. My honor and pleasure to thank you for this successful meeting and the wonderful contributions and discussions. One thing became more than clear to me. We all have one goal: to give patients adequate access to plasma therapies. Well, in the discussions we have already seen, and as figures show as well, figures from 2015, Europe has a worldwide share of about 70% of the collected plasma, while America has more than 64%. As already has been mentioned during this discussion, there is a need for action. In my opinion, however, there is also an information deficit among the population. To explain, very few people are familiar with the difference between whole blood donation and plasma donation. The possibility to donate blood 4 to 6 times a year is a well-known fact. However, many citizens are not aware that plasma donation is possible up to 60 times. According to my opinion, this is the starting point for action, since in principle, people wish to help. My idea would be to run campaigns for plasma donation. I do think such campaigns for plasma donation are target-oriented and very successful. Well, I do not want to go into further detail with regard to COVID-19, but I do think it became clear that we have to bring back all kinds of production sites to Europe, and this as well with regard to the health. We all know that the demand for plasma is not even covered today, and there will be an increase in demand because of modern medicine and modern technology. So I do think it is our task as politicians to create the framework conditions that will enable us to meet the forthcoming. This, of course, also means pursuing and ultimately implementing identified solutions so that people have better access to treatment, and so as to make sure that availability will be significantly increased. Well, to come to an end, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the organizers of this discussion, and I would like to thank you all for your commitment.